Hi, I am Woochia and welcome to Music Theory in 5 minutes. Today I would like to talk about some very versatile type of chords. They can bring a lot of tension, a lot of color, and they can play several roles at the same time. Let's talk about the diminished chords. Diminished chords are often considered as dark sounding because they are rather dissonant. And this dissonance means tension, which means that they need to be resolved in a way or another. The good thing is that these chords are like actors that can play different roles, so they can be resolved in a lot of different ways. And this versatility makes them excellent tools to do modulations, to go from one tonality to another. We already saw different ways of making modulations in other episodes, and one particular technique was to utilize the tension of an authentic cadence to lead the progression toward a particular chord that would then become a new tonality. An authentic cadence is a progression from a degree 5 to a degree 1. That means that if I wanted to go to the tonality of E minor, for example, I could place a B7 chord just before the E minor chord to facilitate the transition. Because if E is my degree 1, then B is my degree 5. Here the B7 creates a tension that is then resolved by the E minor. Then we've seen in yet other episodes that you could alter this 7 chord in several ways. But one alteration we didn't see is the chord 7 flat 5. It is made of a root note, a major third, a diminished fifth, and a minor seventh. So it's like a dominant 7th chord, but its fifth is lowered by a semitone. It's diminished. So when you're using a dominant 7th chord on a 5th degree, you have the option to use a 7 flat 5 chord instead. For our cadence in E minor, for example, it would sound like this. And for an example of a major tonality, in G major, it would sound like this. Now let's take a closer look at this 7 flat 5 chords as it's getting interesting. Look at the interval separating each note. I will add the root note an octave above so we'll see better what's happening. You see the repeating pattern, 2-tone, 1-tone, 2-tone, 1-tone? If we make an inversion with this C7 flat 5, so we have the G flat at the base, this is still technically a C7 flat 5, but it is also a G flat 7 flat 5. If G flat is the root note, B flat is the major third, C is the diminished fifth, which should be called D double flat here really, but it's the same note, and E is the minor seventh. Again, it should be called F flat here, but it's the same note. So whenever you play a 7 flat 5 chord, it can be considered as two different chords, which are a tritone apart, which makes it a great pivot point. For example, for our cadence in E minor, the B7 was transformed into a B7 flat 5, and that would also work to go to a E major even, but this B7 flat 5 can also be a F7 flat 5 to go to a B flat minor or a B flat major. Thing is, neither the B flat major or the B flat minor chords are in the tonality of E minor, nor in the tonality of E major. That's actually a pretty long jump on the circular fifth, so generally when we do that, it's to stay in the new tonality. So a 7 flat 5 chord is a better pivot point for a modulation than for borrowing. Now if you like that kind of pivot point, you will love the diminished 7th chord. It's made of a root note, a minor third, a diminished fifth, and a diminished 7th. So on a C chord, that'd be a C, a E flat, a G flat, and a B double flat, which is the same note than A. In this chord, every note is separated by an interval of 1 tone and a half, which means you can consider any note at the root note, it will always be a diminished 7th chord. So when you introduce a diminished 7th chord in a progression, you can consider it as 4 different chords, which gives a lot of ways to resolve it. And that's the best part. There are a lot of ways to introduce and to resolve a diminished 7th chord. The diminished 7th chord can be found on a 7th degree. It appears naturally in the harmonic minor scale, but it can also be used in a major tonality as a borrowing, and it resolves well on a 1st degree. So in a tonality of C major or C minor, that would make a B diminished 7th chord that resolves well on either a C major or C minor. Note that if you add a G to this B diminished 7th chord, it will become a G7 flat 9, which works great on a dominant chord, which maybe also explains better why it resolves well on a C, G being the dominant of C. In a minor tonality, you can also use it on a 2nd degree to resolve on a degree 1, so in C minor that would be a D diminished 7th chord resolving to a C minor. A diminished seventh chord can also be used on either a raised second degree to resolved on a degree 1 or on a raised sixth degree to resolved on a degree 5. In C major, that would be a D sharp diminished seventh chord resolving to a C major and a A sharp diminished seventh resolving to a G major. To make it easier to remember, a D sharp diminished seventh has the same notes than a C diminished seventh, so it's like a diminished seventh chord on a first degree resolving to a first degree. And the A sharp diminished seventh has the same notes than the G diminished seventh, so it's like a diminished seventh on the degree 5 resolving to a degree 5. Note that this last thing is generally not used to do modulations. It is generally used in the boundaries of one key, but it's a good way to introduce the diminished seventh chord. But as always, there is no rule set in stone in music. You can still try it, and the best judges will be your own ears. To sum it up in a simple way, a diminished seventh chord can be resolved on a chord a semitone above, either major or minor, or on a chord sharing the same root note, either major or minor. And to introduce a diminished seventh chord, you can place it on the 7th degree of your tonality or on the 2nd degree if you're in minor. These are the best options, I think. But you can also use it on a raised 2nd degree and on a raised 6th degree. So you have a lot of options to introduce a diminished 7th chord, which can be considered as 4 different chords, each of which have several ways to be resolved. Now, to finish the video, I would like to make a little experiment. Let's focus on the C diminished 7th chord. It's made of the notes C, E flat, G flat, and A. So it can be considered as a C diminished 7th chord, a E flat diminished 7th, a G flat diminished 7th, or a A diminished 7th. From what we've seen in this video, each of these chords can be resolved a semitone above, so that's C sharp, E, G, and A sharp, each of which can be either major or minor. And they can also resolve to a chord sharing the same root notes, so that's C, E flat, G flat, and A, each of which can also be either major or minor. That would give a whopping 16 options to resolve one chord. So to test that, I've created clips in Ableton Live with every options, and then I have set that up so they play in random order. Right off the bat, we can foresee that the most repeated chord will be the C diminished 7th chord, as it's in every clip. So it should make it sound like the tonal center, as everything will be moving around that. But this tonal center wouldn't be very stable, as it's a diminished chord. So that should make the thing sound a bit weird, a bit mysterious, a bit haunted. Well, it should be interesting. So let's have a listen, and in the meantime, thanks a lot for watching.